Picture this. You're a pilot in World War I, flying high above the Western Front. Below you, a German observation balloon, tethered to the ground, defenseless. But here's the problem. It's not actually defenseless at all. The balloon is surrounded by anti-aircraft guns, machine guns, searchlights, and above it, German fighter aircraft, patrolling, waiting for someone foolish enough to attack. That balloon is the most heavily defended target in the entire war. And yet, some pilots did exactly that. They attacked balloons, repeatedly, fearlessly, knowing the odds. They were called balloon busters, the most dangerous pilots in history. Pilots like Frank Luke, Eddie Rickenbacker, and dozens of others whose names have been forgotten. These weren't reckless suicidalists, they were strategists, warriors who understood that destroying observation balloons meant destroying German eyes, blinding enemy artillery, saving American lives. But the cost was extraordinary. Pilots died constantly, aircraft exploded, careers ended in seconds. Yet they kept coming back, over and over, attacking balloons, hunting them, destroying them. Because they understood something fundamental. Winning wars means doing the impossible. This is the story of balloon busters, the pilots who risked everything, who faced odds that should have been unbeatable, who became legends through sheer determination and courage, and how a single mission to hunt balloons could define an entire war. Let's start with understanding why balloons mattered so much. In modern wars, we have satellites, drones, real-time surveillance from thousands of miles away. But in 1917 and 1918, those didn't exist. The only way to see what was happening on the battlefield was to put a human being up in the sky. And that's what observation balloons were. Human spotters, tethered high above the battlefield, watching, reporting, directing artillery fire. According to military analysis documented in National Archives records, a single observation balloon could direct accurate artillery fire on targets miles away. A balloon observer could see enemy positions that ground troops couldn't possibly detect. They could watch troop movements, monitor supply lines, track reinforcements, guide artillery to devastating accuracy. Without balloons, the German army was blind, vulnerable, unable to coordinate effectively. So the Allies understood something crucial. Destroying balloons wasn't just about tactics. It was about strategy, winning the war. But here's what made it impossibly dangerous. The Germans understood this too, so they protected their balloons with ferocious intensity. According to documented military records and historical analysis, a typical balloon was surrounded by multiple anti-aircraft gun batteries, machine guns, rifles, artillery pieces, all coordinated to shoot down aircraft attempting to attack. And that wasn't all. German fighters would patrol above balloons, multiple aircraft, waiting for Allied pilots. So attacking a balloon meant facing ground fire, anti-aircraft guns, and enemy fighters simultaneously. It meant flying into a zone where death was almost guaranteed. Most pilots refused to do it. Their commanding officers didn't order them to do it. But some pilots volunteered, chose the impossible, went after balloons anyway. Why would anyone make that choice? What drives a human being to accept almost certain death? According to documented pilot accounts in military interviews preserved in archives, the answer is simple. They understood the impact. They understood that destroying an observation balloon saved lives, American lives, Allied lives. They understood that the danger they faced was worth the strategic outcome. And they understood something else. They understood that some missions defined a warrior's entire existence. Eddie Rickenbacker wasn't your typical pilot. He was a race car driver before the war, a daredevil, a man who understood speed and danger. When America entered World War I, Eddie Rickenbacker wanted to fly, wanted to fight, wanted to prove himself. He joined the 94th Aero Squadron and quickly became one of the most formidable pilots in the American Expeditionary Force. According to military records preserved at the National Archives, Rickenbacker accumulated combat victories steadily, aircraft kills, enemy fighters destroyed. He was becoming America's leading ace of World War I. But Rickenbacker understood something that many pilots didn't. Aircraft kills were important, but balloons were strategically transformative. According to documented accounts in military analysis, Rickenbacker began specifically hunting observation balloons, despite the danger, despite the odds, despite understanding he might not come back. On multiple documented missions, Rickenbacker attacked balloon positions that were heavily defended. He would dive hard at the balloon, fire his machine guns, target the envelope, try to ignite the hydrogen. And while he was doing that, anti-aircraft fire would be coming up, German fighters would be descending. Every second was a gamble with death. But Rickenbacker kept doing it, kept attacking, kept hunting balloons. According to military records and historical documentation, Rickenbacker shot down 26 confirmed enemy aircraft during the war, making him America's leading ace of World War I. But many of those victories came from balloon attacks, from missions where the odds were completely against him. Rickenbacker became a symbol of American courage, a pilot who would attack anything, who understood that strategic victory sometimes requires personal risk. But Rickenbacker was just one of many. Across the American Air Service, other pilots were making the same choice, hunting balloons, accepting the danger, and not all of them survived.
Frank Luke was different from other pilots. More aggressive, more reckless, more willing to die for his mission. According to military records documented in the National Archives, Luke joined the 27th Aero Squadron in 1918. He was young, 20 years old, already a pilot with exceptional skill. But Luke became obsessed with one thing: hunting observation balloons. It wasn't aircraft kills that interested him. It was balloons. According to documented accounts from fellow pilots and military records, Luke began targeting balloon positions with ferocious intensity. One balloon, then another, then another. His tally climbed. 14 confirmed balloon kills, more than any American pilot. But here's what made Luke different. He didn't just attack balloons. He studied them, understood their defensive patterns, learned how to penetrate their anti-aircraft fire. According to documented pilot accounts and military interviews, Luke developed tactics that seemed revolutionary. He would approach balloons from unexpected angles, use cloud cover as concealment, dive hard at the target, fire, climb away before anti-aircraft fire could concentrate. It was balloon hunting as an art form, not recklessness, strategy. But strategy has a cost. Each mission was exhausting. Each mission increased the odds of something going wrong. According to documented military records, Luke's commanding officers were concerned about his aggressive tactics. They understood he was brilliant, but they also understood he was pushing his luck. And on September 29, 1918, Luke's luck ran out. According to military records and documented accounts, Luke flew a final mission to hunt balloons. His aircraft was damaged. He was surrounded by German fighters. Anti-aircraft fire was devastating. But according to documented accounts, Luke didn't flee. He kept attacking, kept hunting, kept fighting, until his aircraft was destroyed. Frank Luke died a legend, the balloon buster, the pilot who changed how air combat was understood.
Now let's understand what pilots actually faced when attacking balloons. Not just the danger, but the specific, grinding, relentless threat. According to military technical documentation preserved in archives, observation balloons were extremely well-designed defensive systems. They were filled with hydrogen, highly flammable. A single bullet could ignite them. But they weren't passive targets. They were actively defended. Tethered balloons could be lowered quickly, hauled down at the first sign of an aircraft attack, dropping below the optimal firing altitude. This meant pilots had a narrow window, a few seconds to attack, a few seconds to damage or destroy the balloon before it disappeared. And while that was happening, ground fire was constant, anti-aircraft guns firing, machine guns chattering, rifle fire from trenches. According to military analysis and historical documentation, an attacking pilot might face fire from 50 or more guns simultaneously. 50 guns, all trying to kill you, all firing at once. And if ground fire didn't work, there were German fighters above, waiting, protecting the balloon, ready to pounce on any attacker. According to documented accounts from German pilots, balloon defense was a coordinated, sophisticated system. German fighters would patrol at altitude, watching for attacking aircraft. Anti-aircraft guns would track targets. The balloon itself would descend to safety. It was a layered defense, multiple redundancies, multiple opportunities to kill an attacking pilot. Yet pilots attacked anyway, knowing the odds, understanding the danger, accepting the risk. Why? According to documented pilot interviews in military records, the answer was always the same. Destroying a balloon meant destroying German eyes, meant blinding their artillery, meant saving American lives on the ground. The mathematics of warfare were cold, brutal. One pilot's life for strategic advantage, for information advantage, for the ability to see while your enemy couldn't. Some pilots understood that equation, and they accepted it. Not every balloon hunting mission ended in victory. In fact, most pilots who specialized in balloon attacks didn't survive the war. According to military statistics and documented records, the casualty rate for balloon hunting pilots was catastrophically high. Pilots would volunteer for balloon missions knowing the odds, knowing their survival probability was low, but they did it anyway. According to documented military records and historical analysis, there were specific incidents where the cost became shockingly clear. Pilots attacking the same balloon position would be killed, one after another, wave after wave, each attempt more desperate than the last. Yet, the balloon remained, protected, defended, unconquered. Eventually, it would be captured or destroyed. The Germans would move it to a new position. The cycle would begin again. It was warfare as attrition, warfare as grinding persistence, warfare as willingness to accept casualties for strategic gain. According to documented accounts and military records, balloon busters understood this. They understood they might be the casualty. They understood their mission might not succeed, but they flew anyway. This is what separated balloon busters from ordinary pilots, this willingness to accept almost certain death, to fly impossible missions, to hunt targets that killed most people who tried. Some historians argue that balloon busters were the greatest warriors of any air force during the Great War. Not because they shot down the most aircraft, but because they accepted the most danger, because they hunted the most heavily defended targets, because they died in service of strategy that would never glorify their names. So what impact did balloon busters actually have? Beyond the personal heroism, beyond the individual acts of courage, what did their missions accomplish? According to military analysis documented in the National Archives, the destruction of observation balloons had profound strategic effects. Every destroyed balloon meant German artillery lost effectiveness, meant American and Allied ground troops could advance with better information advantage, meant casualties could be reduced through superior tactical knowledge. The mathematics are grim but clear. One pilot's death could prevent dozens of ground troops from dying. That was the calculation balloon busters made. That was the choice they accepted. According to documented military records and historical analysis, the American and Allied air services prioritized balloon destruction as the war progressed. More pilot training focused on balloon attack tactics, more aircraft were dedicated to balloon hunting missions. The strategy evolved from experimental to systematic. And as the war ended, the role of balloon busters in Allied victory became increasingly apparent. Military analysts credited observation balloon destruction with making key Allied advances possible. Without balloon busters blinding German eyes, without those dangerous missions destroying the German observation network, the final offensives might have been repulsed, casualties might have been higher, the war might have ended differently. But that's not how history remembers balloon busters. Most people have never heard of them. Their names are forgotten. Their sacrifices are obscured. Eddie Rickenbacker is remembered as America's leading ace, but most people don't know his greatest accomplishments came from hunting balloons, not aircraft. Frank Luke is remembered as the balloon buster, but many people don't understand why that mattered, why hunting observation balloons changed the war. And countless other balloon busters are remembered not at all, their names lost to history, their sacrifices forgotten. According to military historians and archivists who study World War I, this is one of history's great forgotten stories. The story of pilots who hunted the impossible, who faced the most defended targets in the war, who died so that strategic advantage could be achieved. What can we learn from balloon busters today? What does their story tell us about courage, about sacrifice, about what warriors truly are? On the surface, it's a story about tactical innovation, about pilots discovering that observation balloons could be hunted, that the impossible could be achieved through skill and aggression. But there's something deeper, something more fundamental about balloon busters. They understood that warfare is not about what's comfortable, it's about what's necessary, what's required for victory, even when that necessity meant accepting almost certain death. According to military psychologists and historians who have studied balloon busters, this reveals something profound about human nature. When a cause is large enough, when the stakes are high enough, when victory matters enough, humans can transcend fear, can accept danger that seems impossible. Balloon busters weren't exceptional physically, they weren't superhuman, they were ordinary pilots who made extraordinary choices. They volunteered for missions they understood would probably kill them. They flew into zones where anti-aircraft fire was overwhelming, where German fighters patrolled constantly, where survival was a miracle, not an expectation. Why? According to documented accounts and military records, the answer was consistent. Because it mattered. Because destroying balloons meant saving lives. Because the mission was larger than their own survival. This is what true courage looks like. Not the absence of fear, but the commitment to do what's necessary despite fear, despite danger, despite the odds being impossible. Balloon busters embodied that principle, and history has largely forgotten them. But their legacy remains in military doctrine, in the understanding that some missions require extraordinary sacrifice, that some pilots must accept danger that seems overwhelming, and in the recognition that true warriors are defined not by comfort or safety,
but by commitment to something larger than themselves.
So what do we take from the story of balloon busters? Pilots who hunted the most heavily defended targets in the war, who understood that their missions might be suicidal, who flew anyway. Warriors like Eddie Rickenbacker and Frank Luke, and countless others whose names were never recorded, whose sacrifices were never celebrated. They changed how warfare is conducted, how air combat is understood, how sacrifice is valued. They demonstrated that courage isn't about being fearless, it's about facing fear and flying anyway. Flying despite the odds, flying despite understanding you might not return. If this story of balloon busters moved you, if their courage and sacrifice gave you chills, hit that like button right now. Subscribe for more forgotten warriors, more impossible missions, more stories of pilots who defied death. Comment below, would you have volunteered for a balloon hunting mission knowing the odds, or would you have refused? What's your take on their sacrifice? Next week, we're covering the German pilot who shot down 80 aircraft, then survived being captured and escaped from a POW camp. This story will shock you. Thank you for watching. Keep honoring the warriors who hunted the impossible. Keep remembering the balloon busters.